Hello everyone, it's December 31st, 2025. Hope you had a great Christmas. Wishing you an awesome 2026. I'm Nolan Reynolds, a real estate agent with Windermere Real Estate in Silverdale, Washington. And today is our last Kitsap housing market update of 2025. Let's check it out. Okay, let's go ahead and do something a little bit different. Let's zoom all the way out here on InfoSparks, which is the Northwest MLS data tracking information. And let's look at some different metrics to try to gauge where we've been and try to put together some kind of picture of where we might be going. So this here is looking at the average sales price. And we know that we saw a crash in 2008. And then things kind of tapered down and stayed relatively steady all the way until about 2016. We started to see the spike, and then we all know that as we made our way into 2020, things just went absolutely bonkers. That's with our average sales price, and this is just looking at it on a graph from 2006. Let's dig a little bit more. So the total amount of homes for sale, and I do want to point out this is all properties: residential, condominium, vacant land, farms, and ranches. If we look at residential single-family homes only, it's very, very similar, but I want to keep it on all property types for this. So total amount of homes for sale, and this gives us a gauge and insight on when we hear that the supply is low, this is what people are talking about. So back in 08, just before the crash, nearly 4,000 total available residential homes, condominiums, vacant lands, farms, ranches for sale. And as we come over here looking at just most recently in November 2025, we had under 1,000. So that's what people are talking about with the lack of supply. Now let's take a peek at average days on market. And again, as we see back here, we were much higher back in 2006 all the way through about 2015, and then we started to see things crash. We've got highs up over 100 here at the very highs, and we've got lows down in the 70s. And as we move our way over here, as we started to see things, this kind of correlates with as prices were going up, days on market were going down, right? And we saw 30 all the way down to 14 and then spiking back up in the winter months as we see normally. And about late 2022 is when we've seen things stabilize all across the board. Sales prices, days on market, really everything I would say has stabilized late 2022 and has been really kind of a balanced market. So we'll see that our average days on market gets in the winter up around 56, and then in the summer has been down closer to 30. This is another interesting one to look at. This is the amount of showings that a listing receives before it goes pending. Now this only tracks back to 2019, but it's still some valuable insight to look at. So as we've hit kind of our stabilization period in late 2022, we've stabilized and we've been seeing somewhere around 10, maybe a little bit below in the summer. And then we've been seeing up around 16 as our high, right? So we've been kind of, 9. So between 9 and 16 days on market has been very steady since about late 2022. So now I want to pop over and let's go ahead and take a look at the median sales price of houses sold for the United States of America here on Freddie's website. And this tracks all the way back to 1965. And we can see things slowly just making their way up. We've got some crashes here. I'm thinking this is maybe like a dot-com bubble in 1990. And then 2008, we know that we saw the housing crash after that. We all know what happened with that. And then we see things spike here. Now, if we see this huge spike here, most people would think naturally that there has to be some amount of a crash coming, right? It's just, that's a huge spike. We have to come back down. And sure, I don't know the future. This is just my observations, my predictions, but let me show you some contrary information as to why that may not happen. If we go back to InfoSparks on the Northwest MLS, let's look at how many months of supply we have. So let me just explain months of supply real quick. So we've got the total amount of homes for sale. Let's look at the last month, November 2025, 888, right? Now let's go look at the total closed sales. Again, November 2025, 278. So what this months of supply is saying is that if we had no new supply and we only went with what we have right now, that 888 listings how many months would it take to sell those? Okay, so 2.7 is what that averages out to. So a healthy amount of months of supply is somewhere between 4 and 6 months. We have not seen above 4 months of supply since September 2016. That's the last time that we saw above 4 months. And a healthy market is between 4 and 6 months of supply. And so this lack of supply is what is contradictory to the idea that we see a crash coming here just because things have spiked. We've got a lack of inventory too. So my personal opinion, because we've got these equally pulling forces, I believe that the market stays relatively stable. I'm going to say maybe a 3% swing, either up or down over the next year. So if you're considering buying a home, but you're afraid that things are going to crash, I would say it's probably unlikely that it's going to happen anytime relatively soon, but it's understandable that you're worried about that. But I think that you should look at the bigger picture and plan to hold on to the home for a long time, whether you plan to live in it, whether you plan to rent it. Let's say that you purchased your house back in 2007 at the worst time to buy. $257,000 was the average across America, and you held on to it all the way in 2009, and it crashed all the way down to $208,000, but you had a good paying job and you were able to pay your mortgage and you were able to hold on till about 2012, and you broke even. And then look at everything that came after that. You're probably feeling pretty good about yourself. So if you're a little bit scared to buy a home, it's understandable. Just make sure that it's a home that you can afford. If things do take a downturn, that you feel confident and comfortable with you or you and your spouse's incomes, that you can make it through the downturn that will inevitably come, whether it's in a year or 10 years or 20 years from now, but it will inevitably come, that you can comfortably ride through that and go through the downtime so that you can hold on to the asset, the home, and enjoy the profits that will come after that. And then looking at the flip side, if you're a potential seller, same thing. I don't see much changing. But if you know that you want to sell your home and you know that you want to take your profits and you've got other plans of what you might want to do with that money, now's as good a time as ever. Sure, it could go down in the next year or two. It could. I personally don't believe so, but I don't think it's going to go dramatically up either. And so it's a great time if you did buy back here in this downturn and you were really fortunate to buy back then. Congratulations, that's awesome. It would be a great time to take your profits. And that concludes the last Kitsap County housing market update of 2025. Thank you for taking the time to watch. If you're interested in buying or selling a home here in Kitsap County, I have a lot to offer, and I would love the opportunity to sit down for a free consultation. Reach out to me anytime if you'd like to do so. Thank you and have a great day.